Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history for Wadsworth's posterity. I'm Caesar Carini, your host, and today we have a group of people who are very, very well known to the Wadsworth community, the Doyle family. The two Doyle women now have different names, and we'll get to those in a minute, but those of you who remember Mary Doyle, who is Mary Dressler now, and we have Anna Doyle, who is Anna Riedel now, and we have Bud Doyle, actually Leo Doyle, but no one ever calls you Leo. Is that right, Bud?
Right.
I mean, from as many years as I've known you, it's always been Bud Doyle. Now, we have them in boss order. We have Mary here first. She's the boss of the whole place, right, Mary?
Right.
You boss them, and I understand that if Bud does something that you don't want, you're going to turn around and slug him on. Is that right? Well, you're kind of big. You're gonna straighten him out, and Anna's gonna be the buffer between the two, and then Bud. Be careful what you say, because you got those two sisters who are used to bossing you around.
Yeah.
We're going to start with Mary, and you're not the least bit sensitive about your ages. It wouldn't do you any good anyway, Mary, because everyone knows how old you are, because we still have people who went to school with you, same with Anna and Bud. So tell us when you were born, where you were born, who your parents were, and your mother's maiden name, and where they came from, and all of that. And the Doyles go back, what, a good 125?
1889.
1889, so it's a long time, 110 years so far that we know of. So tell us where you were born and when, and we know how, but when.
September 22nd, 1924.
1924, September 22nd.
In Wadsworth.
Wadsworth. But not at a hospital, right?
In the hospital.
In the hospital, that's right.
Yeah.
The hospital was built then, because the hospital was built in 1920. And the first two people to be born in it were Bob Clapper and Harriet Crawford. Mm-hmm. They were the first two people in 1922, I believe. The hospital was built in 1921, I'm sorry. That was the old horse barn. Do you remember, and where were you living at the time? Where were your parents living at the time?
On South Lyman, 242
South Lyman.
South Lyman.
A lot of people lived on South Lyman at that time, and we're going to get into neighborhoods and things like that in a few minutes. To whom were you born? Leo, of course, your father.
Leo Doyle and Eva.
Eva's maiden name.
Eva Lee Doyle.
But her maiden name?
Eva Lee.
Eva Lee.
Oh, Lee. Yeah. I'm sorry. Lee, L-E-E?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right.
All right. Lee was her maiden name. Now let's go to Anna and tell us about your birth a couple of years later.
Well, I was born February 1st, 1926, and I was born at home.
Yeah, born at home.
Mm-hmm. And Mary, the reason she was born in the hospital is because our great-grandmother was sick at that time and she was dying. So
I see. Your great-grandmother.
Right.
So you remember your great-grandmother.
Well, see, I don't, because she was dying when Mary was born.
Do you remember her, Mary, at all? No, she died at that time.
I was about 2 months old
when she died. But that was great-grandmother, so you remember your grandmother as well.
Oh, my grandmother, sure, I remember.
Well, we'll be talking about grandmother, too. Mm-hmm. And Bud, what about you? You were born...
August the 11th, 1927.
1927.
In home.
At home?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was born at home, too. And the part that really makes it significant is that I weighed 12.5 pounds at birth.
Gosh.
Which causes women to wince and men to say, wow.
That's
some
pretty
people
good,
aren't some people aren't that heavy when they go to the first grade.
Right.
Now we have your parents here, your parentage, and where you were born, where you were living. Tell us a little bit about the Doyle clan, and how about, Anna, you telling us about the Doyle clan, because they weren't born in Wadsworth, they're actually born in...
Some of them were born in Scotland, but the original Doyles came from Ireland, and during the potato famine, they went into Scotland to get jobs, and most of them worked in the coal mines.
Coal mines.
So then when they heard about the coal mines in the United States, they came over here and came into Wadsworth and to work in the coal mines.
And which coal mines did they work in? Do you remember the coal mines at all?
The only one that I remember is the Williams coal mine.
The Williams coal mine. Mm-hmm.
But I think there were some before that, and I don't remember the name.
The Mullaney coal mines. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But they worked in all of them.
They worked in all of them, and they were almost all of the coal miners were the Irish, the Hutchisons and the Mullaney's and the Doyles.
Murrays and
The Murrays and the Marins didn't
I
work
don't
in.
think the Marins worked in the coal mines.
No, they were in railroaders, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, right?
Huey was railroad.
How's that?
Huey was railroad. Huey Doyle.
Huey Doyle, that's Uncle Huey, right?
He's a cousin.
A cousin?
Doris's mom, or Eileen's father. He was a
Eileen
railroad.
Aldifer's father.
Yeah.
Was a cousin to whom?
To us.
To
He was a Doyle too. He was a cousin.
So your parents and Huey's parents were brother and sisters, or were brother?
Our great-grandfather and Huey's father were brothers.
Yep.
Okay. So that made you and Eileen Doyle Aldifer. Now, along the line there somewhere was Mary Doyle Kaler, who lived at Doyle's Crossings. Tell us about Doyle's Crossing and where's that and what is it all about?
Well, Mary was Huey's sister.
Huey
Mary
Doyle's
Kaler.
sister,
Mhm.
right?
And all the Doyles gathered down at Mary's. We used to have clam bakes.
Tell us where Mary lived for the
She
record.
lived right down at the end of Silver Creek Road there where the crossing was, and the trains went right in front of her house.
How many feet? Tell us how many feet.
From the train there, I bet it wasn't much more than 100 feet,
If that.
if that. Mhm.
If that. And separating Mary's house, Mary and Henry Kaler's house, was a small road which actually was called Silver Creek, but no one ever called it Silver Creek. And back of that road lived the Hutchisons and the Klostermans and
I think some Murrays lived back
some Murrays
there.
back there, yes, and the Murrays lived on Durling Drive as well. But that was Doyle's Crossing, named after Mary's father, I believe, and Huey's father. Then they came from where? Remember that, Bud?
No, I don't remember.
How about
I have an idea they came from the same place in Scotland because they were brothers.
No, I mean from before they came to Wadsworth. They were from
Oh.
Doylestown, were they not?
See, now I never knew of them. Her brother Tommy lived in Doylestown, but I didn't know whether the other ones did or not.
Does it ever occur to you that maybe the word Doylestown had a ringing relationship with your families?
I did inquire about that once, and someone had said that it wasn't our family.
Not the same family. I think
Right.
that is correct. However, it is one of the oldest communities in the area.
Right.
And Doylestown has the oldest Roman Catholic church in the entire Diocese of Cleveland. And at the time that it was the Diocese of Cleveland at that time, it covered everything from the eastern eastern Ohio border all the way over to close to Toledo and all the way down to Ashland. So that was the oldest church. St.
Is that
Peter's and
right?
Paul's is the oldest church. So that was a big influence there.
Well, another thing, they had the cemetery there, and Wadsworth didn't have a cemetery at the time, so that's why the father and two of his sons are buried in Doylestown instead of in Wadsworth.
Ah, I
but
see.
the mother and the daughters are buried in Wadsworth.
Now, which father is buried in Doylestown?
Luke,
Luke, who was your grandfather?
right? Our
Great-grandfather. And who else was buried in Doylestown?
Luke and his two sons, Tom and John, and they were just in their teens when they died. They were very young. They worked in the coal mines, and the three of them were buried in Doylestown.
Do you remember the coal mines at all, Mary?
No, I don't.
You never worked in one, I know, but did you remember?
I always heard a lot about it.
Did anybody in your family work in the coal mines? Grandfather, maybe?
Great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather, but you don't remember him, do you?
No.
Yeah. See, one of the things that I remember, I lived right there where the coal mines were. The Mulaney mine was not too far. As a matter of fact, John Mulaney was our neighbor. And he had married one of the Hutchison girls, Mary. And he had, in 1892, he opened the mines down there. And the number 3 mine was closed in March of 1934. I was 3 years old. My father and I went down there the day that they closed that mine, the last mine in that area. And then that hooked up with the Williams mine, which went all the way up to where Broad Street now, but it ended somewhere close to where the Mills farm was. The Mills farm is on Mills Road and Broad Street, opposite the car dealerships. And what I remember about them is that the miners would always come home very, very dirty. soot. I mean, you just see their eyes. And I can still remember some of those old coal miners coming out. I was wondering if you had remembered any of those people coming out.
I remember Mr. Williams. They lived across the street from us on Lyman.
The
there.
Williams mine
Warren
people?
Williams.
Warren Williams. And what do you remember about him?
Well, I always remember when he came home, he'd have his lunch bucket in his
Right.
hand. And he, from being in the mines, he was so round-shouldered. He
Yes,
walked very round-shouldered, very quiet. And
Yeah, they didn't say too much in the mines. And the reason they're round shouldered, the mines were only 4 feet high because they had to dig those things out by hand.
Is that why?
Oh, yeah.
and then
They had small mules, little donkeys that would go into there with a little donkey cart. And the reason that they closed the number 3 mine was that the donkey drowned.
is that right?
Yes. But you were kind of the only boy in the family.
Right.
Now, in an Irish family such as the Doyles had, what did being the only boy really mean to you?
Well, spoiled.
Now, is that right, Mary? Was he spoiled?
Right.
How was he spoiled? Who spoiled him?
Oh, everybody.
And why was that? Just because he was a boy?
No, just little sweetie. Of course, he wasn't happy with having 2 sisters. He always wanted a brother, too.
And that didn't happen.
And it didn't
That
happen.
didn't happen. So now tell us a little bit about the growing up days, and you were talking about the growing up days in your family during Depression time. Things were tough. You remember that? Tell us what you remember particularly. You were the oldest.
Well, really, I don't remember too much about
The
that.
Depression?
No. Except that I know Dad always worked. You know, the jobs were hard to get and that, but
Where did your dad work at the time, Mary?
He worked, wasn't it Blau Plumbing then?
Actually, at the match.
At the match
Most of
then?
Yeah, and then he worked for Blouse Plumbing too.
First there. He worked first
Which
for
Blau would this be?
Tex
Tex
Blouse.
Blau. Tex Blau. And Tex Blau then became something else in Wadsworth. What was it?
Fire chief. Yeah.
And then there was Blau, who was with the electric
With the city. Yeah.
collection department, or whatever you want to call that. How were Tex and Blau related?
I think they were brothers.
Or they
They were-
brothers.
Now, they were tall fellows,
Right.
both of them, and they had a plumbing company. And in those days, Bud, do you remember what the plumbers would work with? I mean, now they work with plastic and copper and so forth. What did they work with then?
I think it was mostly, what the heck kind of...
Galvanized and
Yeah.
steel.
Yeah.
Because we just had all our galvanized taken out and put copper in.
But that's what they worked with.
Yeah.
Now, I suspect that both of you were not really privy to how much work it is to work with galvanized pipe. Bud, did you ever work with galvanized pipe?
I used to, with my dad, you know.
Tell us a little bit about working with galvanized pipe. I mean, some of the really major differences.
Oh, I don't know, they put them on them threaders, you know, threading machines. I never did too much, but he did all that stuff.
Hard work.
Yeah, he had all them pipe wrenches.
The dies,
Dies,
and
wrenches.
big pipe wrenches, and heavy.
Yeah.
Honest to heavens, they were heavy. And that was an improvement over the lead pipes. The lead pipes were even worse than
Even
that.
heavier.
Yeah.
And then in order to, right now you solder copper pipes together, and with plastic pipes you just put a little bit of gooey stuff on there, stick them together, and they hold forever, and they're light. You can pick up a whole bundle of them and walk away with them, but in those days you could not do that. So these plumbers had to be extremely strong.
Right.
And but if you ever had the opportunity to try to turn one of those dies, you know,
I can't remember if I did or not. I used to watch my dad do it, you know.
they had a special kind of a vise. Do you remember the vise that you used to have? What did the
he
vise
had-
look like?
He had one, they had posts coming down,
Yeah.
sitting in that thing clamped over,
Yeah,
and then you tighten them
you
down.
tightened it up.
Yeah.
And what a tremendous difference. Now you can just put things together and it's
Yeah,
a
right.
wonderful thing. How long did he work as a plumber?
Really all his life.
All of his life.
He did plumbing jobs for people around Wadsworth almost up until the time he retired.
We have a wonderful picture of Leo Doyle, and that everyone called him Leo.
Right.
Right.
Or,
This is-
or Pat.
Or Pat Doyle, right. But Leo was a sturdy man.
Very strong.
sturdy. They had to be. They had to be with those pipes there. This is Leo Doyle right there. I'll see if I can't get a better picture of Leo. This is a story about Meet Leo Doyle, and I'm going to read just a little bit of it here. The lifetime Wadsworth resident and an employee of the Ohio Match Company since 1929, Leo Doyle of 241 South Lyman Street. Leo lived there ever since his family moved from North Gypsy Lane when they were 2 years old. Now then, tell us where North Gypsy Lane was and which house was it and what is the road called now? Mary, you're probably the first.
I wouldn't know. Anna would know that.
Anna would know that?
All I remember them saying was it was Gypsy Lane, but I don't think the house is there anymore that
Probably
he was
gone.
born in.
Gypsy Lane is now called Hartman Road.
Right.
And so we can give a geographical location of it. It is approximately 1.5 miles from the center of town going east, and that's on the north side of the road. It's now called Hartman Road, and it's a not a main thoroughfare, but a good collector street
Right.
that takes people up to Route 261 so they can get onto the highway. And we stopped calling it Gypsy Lane many, many years ago because it was a politically good thing to do, political accurate thing to do. Now, why did we call it Gypsy Lane? Do you remember that, Mary?
You know, Anna.
No, I don't remember why
I
they
don't
called it
either.
Gypsy Lane.
Because the gypsies used to camp up there.
Is that right?
I
No,
think
I never heard that.
Helen told me that yesterday, and we were
Oh.
talking about it.
Now, Helen would be your wife, Helen Truex. Now, how would Helen know that?
Gosh, I don't know.
Her mother's family lived there, the Lightfoots.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
The Lightfoots lived there.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to get Helen and her sister Evelyn and her brother Jim. I think they probably still call him Jim, don't we? We used to call him
Yeah.
Jimmy years ago,
Yeah.
but we call him Jim now. He's an adult. We're going to try to get them to talk about the Lightfoots on Gypsy Lane. They owned a huge parcel, well, huge in those days, on the east side of the road, I believe, was it not? Remember that, Bud?
Pardon?
It was on the east side.
The Lightfoots owned that land on the
Yeah.
east side of the road. And
They have it for sale right now.
is it for sale?
Yeah.
And
It goes way back in.
oh, way far back.
Yeah.
It goes all the way back to Mills Road. But the farm to the south of it was the Freed farm. And then the gypsies would camp either on the Freed farm or on the north side of the Lightfoot farm, which is now an open field. Well, they have some places in there now. So that's where the Doyles lived. And I think that it's somewhat significant that if I am correct from what other people have told me about the Doyles, that your father lived, get this, very close to your wife's grandfather when they were growing up, and they probably didn't even know that their grandchildren, or that their children, to his grandfather, never knowing that their children would get married someday to each other. I think that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about your marriages and all of that, but before we do that, we're going to have to kind of hurry along here because there are quite a few things to talk about. Mary, you started school where and when?
Franklin School.
And why Franklin School? Because you were living on
South
Lyman
Lyman.
Street, and your neighbors were 3 policemen. Who were they?
Tommy Lucas, Harv Weldy.
And
what's the
Ed
other?
Transu.
Ed Transu.
Ed Transu. The police department lived
Right.
in your neighborhood, so
Right.
you had to be good. What do you remember about those people?
Well, I remember Harv Weldy pretty well, and Tommy Lucas. Well, we liked them.
Oh, they were good people.
They were
What
good
wonderful
people.
yeah.
That's right.
Ed Transu, we had his daughter on, one of the 4 girls. We had her on. Carol. Carol what?
I don't know her last
Is it
name.
Moss?
Moss. Carol Moss. You got that right, yes. I still call her Carol Transu. As I call you Mary Doyle and Anna Doyle yet, but I'm sure that you have the names. But you went to Lincoln School then.
No,
I'm sorry, to Franklin School.
Franklin,
And that would have been in 27, 28, 29?
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere in that. Do you remember anything about that? Who some of the people were that you went to school with? And
Oh gosh, can't think right now. But
well, if you think of some of them, you come up with them.
in my class.
Yes,
In there. Well, I think of Louis LaPaglia,
Yes, Lola Paglia.
Calvin Siffert.
Cal Siffert, yes. Now, Cal Siffert was not of the other two Sifford
No.
families we had here. He's not related to Al Sifford or Tony Sifford. It's a different Sifford altogether.
Ladima was his sister.
Pardon me?
Ladima Sifford.
Ladima Sifford,
And then
right.
his other sister was Everhard Flores.
Yes.
She was a Sifford.
Right, and she was a Sifford also. Mhm. And who are some of the other ones, Mary, that you remember?
I should remember, but I just can't think of them. right
Well,
now.
they'll come to you along here, and you just blurt out and say, younger brother and sister, just keep quiet for a second. I'm going to come up with the names of these people that I just got done remembering. And then, do you remember some of the teachers and some of the people
Well,
that...
yeah, my first grade teacher was Miss Stauffer.
Everyone had her.
I think the second grade was Miss Martin,
Miss Martin.
and third grade I think was Miss Jockey.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember fourth. I had Mr. Doty.
Yes.
I think he was fifth
A
grade.
lot of people had him.
Howard Daly.
Howard Daly.
Howard Daly, oh yeah, I
Boy.
can't forget him.
That's right. No, we can't forget him.
He used the paddle on me a couple times.
Bud, you're going to tell him yourself now, right? Mary, you went to Lincoln or to Franklin too, didn't you?
Yes.
And when you started, probably 31, 2?
Would have been 1930.
1930. And
I started in
who were some of the
kindergarten.
people that you remember down there?
Well, I had Miss Wells for kindergarten, and then I had pretty much the same teachers as Mary. I had Miss Stauffer first, Miss Martin second, Miss Yockey. First, before Miss Yockey, was a Miss Robinson. But after she left, then Miss Yockey came in. And the fourth, I had Mr. Doty, and the fifth, Howard Daly, and the sixth, Miss Treffinger. She was the
Trevor,
principal.
everyone. That's she's the principal.
Then we had Miss Oles for art,
Art,
and Miss
Gladys Oles.
Right, and Esther Sprigg for music, and before her, Miss Lockenmeyer.
And Miss Lockemeyer, right? Esther Sprigg is still living.
Right, we had her at our class at our last
She's still
reunion.
living. She's one of the very, very few people who's still living from those old days. And who are some of the kids in the neighborhood that you remember? Who went down
Well, there were the Tryons and Carl Lee and Wanda.
Would that be Barbara Tryon?
No, that would be Marie and Norma and Foster,
Okay.
and then
Betty.
Betty. And
Betty Tryon. I meant Betty. I didn't mean Barbara. I'm sorry. Yes, Betty Tryon.
Betty Tryon.
Betty was the baby, wasn't she?
No, I think Norma.
Norma was
Nor was the baby.
baby.
Okay.
And then Carl Lee and Thelma and Wanda, the three of them. And then there were the Williams kids next door to them.
Which Williams?
That would be John and Alan and Wes and Darrell and Mary.
And Mary.
They had a sister Mary. And that was Warren Williams' family.
Right.
And then there were the Sheevels, Tate and his family.
Oh, we're getting some good names here that we haven't had before.
That we
Good
haven't
for you.
And then Junior
Stolich.
Brown, Stoliches, and Junior Brown, but he later went by the name George Hallowell.
Yes, they married Strauss,
Strauss,
Mary Jane Strauss, right?
And there were the Roods, Bob and Phyllis, and
Phyllis
Phyllis Rood,
And Sue.
Sue
Rood,
Rood. She
yeah.
married the Blue Ball.
The Blue Ball, and he's dead now.
And then down, there were the Witchies down at the bottom of the street.
Which witches would these be?
That would be,
Dan?
I remember mostly the older ones, which would be more
George?
Dad's age.
George?
That'd be George Witchy and Leo Witchy and
Clarence
Clarence, right? He worked at the
and
Met.
Frank.
Frank.
How about Ben?
Ben,
Wouldn't that have been the older?
I thought George was the oldest in that family, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I just remember that they were there.
See, Mary, you're coming up with these names too that we've all forgotten too. See, that's why we need to have you around.
Yeah.
What about some of the kids in school? Do you remember?
Sure, there was Anna Gavinsky and Constance.
We had Anna Gavinsky on this program.
And Constance Hoover Swinehart.
Yes.
And Bunny Broughton. And
These are names we haven't. A lot of these names we haven't come across before. So let's keep it up, Mary or Anna.
Merle Wiesen, Mike Zagava, and Art Zephyr, and let's see, Irene Potter Weber, and let's see. I'll hate myself for not being it. Louis Dispenza.
Louis Dispenza. Well, as you think of them, we'll have, please come up with them again. Bud, you started probably in 33,
32?
32?
32, 2 years after me.
Yeah.
32.
2 after her.
And who are some of the people you remember?
Well, I had all the same teachers as Marion.
Right. And what about the kids?
Oh, Lorne Krosky.
Lauren Krosky, that name has not come up. Tell us a little bit about Lauren Krosky and his ability to play the trumpet.
Oh, yeah, he was good.
Darn good trumpet
He lived
player.
right beside us on
His mother was a
Kale.
Kale. There are 5 or 6 of the Kale girls, and we've been trying to get one of the descendants of the Kales on the program, but he won't come, and that's Donald Fraley. Donald Fraley's mother was a Kale.
Oh.
Eunice.
Oh,
Eunice,
yeah.
Eunice
Right.
Kale. Right. So, if you have any clout with the Fraleys, we're going to try to get Donald on.
How
And who
about Bill Kale's?
Bill Kale,
that
yeah.
family?
Bill Kale is was Bill Kale's son, right?
Right.
Now he would be approximately 78 or 79 years old, would he not?
He's about 2 years older than I, about 75,
Now,
76.
is he around town yet?
He is.
Lives on Overlook.
We need to get a hold of Bill Kale too. So it's so difficult. We're so grateful for the 3 of you coming in. It takes 10 times longer for me to bring people onto the program than it does to interview them. And they don't need to be. Now, you've been on the program now for a few minutes. Are you the least bit nervous? No.
I'm not.
Not at all. Not at all. There's nothing to it. Who are some of the other people that you remember then, Bud?
Oh, the Greiners
Yeah, Ira and Bob.
and the daughter. I can't think of her name.
Jerry.
Jerry Derrick.
Jerry.
Yeah, red hair.
Yeah.
Worked at Isley's at one
The
time.
Webbers.
Which Weber?
The
Edna?
Elmer. Elmer was his dad, and Louis was a boy, and Tug, remember Tug Weber,
Yes,
wrestler?
Shirley.
So on that state championship team.
Now, you had a girlfriend, Bud.
Huh?
You had a girlfriend in grade school.
Yeah, who's your girlfriend in grade school? Let's hear it.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Margaret Bodley.
Oh, Margaret.
Margaret Bodley, yes. Margaret Bodley, who's now Margaret Butai.
Yeah, she lived down by the Franklin School,
Yes,
right beside of Malichis, I think.
right. That's,
Tony.
her name was Bodally, right?
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Really admired her mother. Boy, she was a good
Nice
person. And
person,
Margaret, too. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I loved her mother. She's a great person.
And Bonnie Brader, do you remember
Yes,
Bonnie
Shirley
Brader Shannon?
Bonnie Brader Shannon. Her mother was a Sherman.
Yep. I can't think of her name, but she's still living out on Akron Road with her grandson.
Really? Her name was,
Porter, wasn't it?
can't think of it right now, but Bonnie Brader's mother was a Sherman.
Oh,
How about the Kreider girl that married Halvey? George Halvey lived on Pine.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
right,
she-
right. There are two, one was, she was a teacher.
yes.
Lois, no.
No, what was that Kreider?
Faye Kreider.
Faye Kreider,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
She just retired, didn't she?
Well, a few years ago.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
too long ago, though.
Now
Right.
she's
there's
my
another,
age.
another girl I went to school with, Margaret Razor. She lived right
Margaret
across
Razor,
from all
yes.
these.
These are names which have not
Yeah.
come up, and this is so great. This is, keep it up. We'll hire you, Anna. Phenomenal memory.
She's got a good memory.
Yeah, she has a good memory. And
Now
tell
you'll
us,
ask me something and I'll forget.
well, join the group. Join the group. One of the things that your father did, as I remember from way, way back, because I was heavily involved with music myself, because we tried to do it in the high school, and we did for a while until it became illegal, were the minstrel shows. Tell us about the minstrel shows that you remember, Mary, and then Bud and Anna, you fill in on the minstrel shows.
Well, now my memory's not good on that because when I went to them, I was pretty small. Remember Mom saying how young we were.
Do you remember them at all?
I remember the last one, and I remember Dad always had to use a cork and burn a cork, and that's how he blackened his face. And they always, he and Johnny Harper used to shoot jokes back and forth to each other.
We have this wonderful picture of all of the people in the minstrel show, the Lions Club Minstrel. This is 1928. Look at that. Isn't that something? These are the people. I'm going to read the names of these people because they are some outstanding citizens of Wadsworth who did a tremendous job of participating in the minstrel show. I'm trying to get that on there. I guess it's too long or too big. I'll hold it still and then maybe we can pan that with a camera. That's good. They're indistinguishable there, but I'm going to read these names and you'll be able to see them. 1928. This is Leo Doyle, the very first one, right there in the front row. And he had his face blackened. And Joe Neath, Dee Batterson, Leon Jones, Don Parmalee, Eddie Allen, and Harry Bowers. And they have a Neely without a first name. That was Bill Neely, I'm almost sure. Bill Straighton, Herb Tibblesing, Don Eckert, Dave Straighton, George Geisinger, I'm sorry. And the other Geisinger, I think might have been, Dick Geisinger, Bones Simister, Jack Overholt, Les Baker, Hubert Winters, Harry Abrams, George Baker, and then they have one who's identified, John Harper, Sterling Seacrest, and Bill Simister. In the rear are George Parmalee, Elias Frederick, Dwight Hart, Dick Venner, Joe Bender, Jay Hilliard, Clarence Hooven, Glenn Freeborn, Bill Wells, and Claude Titley. Now, aren't those names that we remember from our boyhood and girlhood days? Every single one of those names we just knew so well. And while we're showing some old pictures here, I want to show the pictures of the Match Shop girls in 1939. We had a picture of the Match Shop girls in 1933, of whom there I think only one or two living, maybe only one. And these were the 1939 Match Shop girls.
This was a skit that they did at the anniversary. These weren't really people that worked there.
Oh, these were the skit. This was a skit. Well, 1939, when we celebrated our 125th anniversary, and where Esther Melvin Daniels was the queen. She was only 16 years of age.
She's also in that picture.
She's in this picture, and I'm going to read these names too. This was Frances Carly Bittinger. Now, Frances Carly was the daughter of Carly, who had a gas station there on the corner of Hartman Road, and married Buddy Bittinger, right? Right, Buddy Bittinger. Elsie Aston, Mary Williams, Pat McCain, Anna Doyle Riedel, that's you, Nancy Kent Houseworth, Jean McMichael, McCurran, and Marge Bittinger, and she was Buddy Bittinger's sister. Right. And she married, at this time, they called her Marge Bittinger Ty. However, she was married she was married to Knapp first. Mary Ellen Overhaul Cipra, and we had Mary Ellen on the program. Esther Melvin Daniels, right there she is. Gertrude Glider, Martha Ray Beal, remember Martha Ray too, Glee Critchbaum, Barton, Molly Drobnik Jersic. Her daughter used to work for me.
Is that right?
Yes, Molly Drobnik's daughter used to work for me. Evelyn Leatherman Cromwell, Marilyn Robinson Hoagland. She's still living, isn't she?
Yes.
Her husband died. Back row, Grace Blau, Dot McMullen, Watson, Maxine Mosher Jameson, Carolyn Medding, she's still around, of course, and Pat Welsh Parmalee, Gloria Bender Ott, Rita Gehring Couch, and she's in our Historical Society, and Lois May Spice. That's something that was just a tremendous entertainment for us during that period of time. You remember it, Mary?
I do.
What did they do? What did those girls do?
Didn't you march?
We were in a matchbox, and when it opened up, we came out.
Tell us about that.
We came out and did march to it and had a different
Skit.
skit.
Tell us about the matchbox. Who made it and how was it made?
You know, I don't know who did make that.
But how big was it?
It was huge.
And made out of what?
I really don't know.
I think it was made out of compressed paper. I'm not sure. I'm not really positive, but I remember it. 1939, that's about I was 8 years old at the time. But I remember that. And people talked about it for years, and oh my heavens, I'll bet that matchbox has been probably trashed by now. But wouldn't that be something for the legacy of Wadsworth history to have? Oh my, we've thrown so many things away that would mean so much to people now. Do you remember it at all, Bud?
No.
You don't remember it? We probably weren't allowed to go because your big sisters wouldn't let you. They were the boss, remember?
Yeah.
That's right. The people who were your ancestors remember so many good things, and I wish that we would have had the same kind of luck in having all of Wadsworth remember the good things. Right here, for instance, is the Wadsworth Enterprise 18 what?
Is it 1869? in there?
1869, and they have a sample of that for us, and it's done in lamination. Of course, that was not laminated at the time, but I think that the local markets, I'm going to read a little bit about the local markets on that, and we have here wheat, 72 to 74, and oats, 28 to 30 cents. Corn on the ear, 23, and we're talking, this is pennies now, and a full sheep, mutton dressed, all together, the whole thing only $7. A whole beef, $7. Oh my heavens! You just can't believe these prices. But that was what they did. And while we're showing the pictures, let's show the pictures of the original Doyles that came from Scotland, from Ireland, to the United States in
1879.
1879. So the Doyles have been here for 120 years. 120 years. And actually, Mary, you've been here for more than half that time, haven't you?
So I'll be 75.
75, so that's more than half the time. Now, we're going to run out of time unless we quickly go to your marriages and your families. Well, let's do that first, Mary, and then we'll come back to some of these other things, because your kids will kill you if you don't mention your kids on here, and your wife. Mary, tell us about your whole family. You were married when, where?
Well, we were married, I married Wilson, Buck Dressler.
Buck Dressler, and tell the relationships between Buck and the other ones, for instance, Howard and Wade and all of those.
Yeah. Let's see, there was 7 children.
Right. Name them. Buck was not the oldest.
See. Chuck was Charles Jr.
Right.
Wade.
Wade, now dead.
Right.
Don.
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 Howard.
Howard.
And
had two sisters, Marion and Helen.
And Marion, who married whom?
Marion married Howard Yoder.
Howard Yoder, and Helen married?
Helen was married to Frank Carvelli. And Helen's still living, but Marion's dead.
Marion's dead.
So's Helen's husband, Marion's husband. Did I miss one of the boys?
No.
Buck.
Did I get?
Well, Buck, yeah. You're married to Buck.
Yeah.
And your children. And when were you
We
married?
have no
When were you married?
June 26, 1948.
1948. Where were you married? Here in Wadsworth?
In Wadsworth.
In Wadsworth. And who are your children?
We didn't have children.
No children?
No children.
Okay, all right, fine. Did you not have some kids living with you at one time, though? Maybe they were just visiting, your neighbors and things like that. But I thought that,
No.
remember children, maybe your nephews and nieces had a few of
Probably.
those. Probably so.
Probably.
And what's Buck doing, and what did Buck do?
Well, he worked at the water department
In Wadsworth?
in Wadsworth.
Doing what? I think it's
And,
extremely important we know that, because that's something that very few
Could
people...
I look at my notes?
No, absolutely, look at your notes. You can read anything. This
No,
is
he
not a
was-
finished product. What this is gathering data.
He was born in Wadsworth, March 1917. Graduated from Wadsworth High, 1936. Started work at the Ohio Match in the factory. Went to the Army Air Corps, 1942 to 1945. Worked at the Ohio Match, Babcock and Wilcox the last 24 years with the water plant, City of Wadsworth. 1959, 1983, then retired. And his parents were Charles and Maud Dressler, both deceased.
Both deceased. They would be well over 100 years old now.
Right.
Way over 100 years old, right.
Right.
As would your father,
Yes. Be 101 now.
101. Yeah. That's a lot of years.
A lot of years.
Anna, how about telling us about yours?
Well, I married Calmer Riedel. He was from New Washington, Ohio. He worked at Midwest Rubber for a number of years.
How'd you
and,
meet him? I think that's very important.
I went to work at Midwest Rubber as a switchboard and operator and accountant, and that's how I happened to meet him. The girl whose place I was taking introduced me to everybody in the office there, and then he went from there. When he first came out of college, he was over in Cauga Falls at a little rubber company over there. And
Which rubber company was it?
Gosh, I've forgotten what the name of that, they don't have that place
And
anymore.
what did they make?
They made reclaim, latex. And
What were some of the things that they made with the reclaimed latex?
they made tubing for your, what you put in your arm now. And
Well,
for-
hospital tubing,
Yeah, well, they
Yeah.
made different types of hospital tubing.
different sizes.
And actually, they made it for about everything. They made it for slingshots and different kinds of medical equipment. And that's mostly what they did was the tubing. And the two men that he originally worked with started their own company. And they called him and asked him if he would come over there. So that's how we happened to leave Wadsworth. And he worked in Kent, but I talked him into living in Stowe because we were on Wadsworth's telephone line.
That's right.
So that way I could kind of keep in touch with the family.
What was the
every
name of the
day.
company that you had?
Kent Latex Products.
Latex Products, right. And when were you married?
We were married in January of 1956.
1956.
1955, I'm sorry.
55.
55. And we have two children, Leanne Bailey, who lives on Amy Way in Wadsworth, and she was a learning disabilities teacher at Brunswick. And then my son is Charles Jess. They both started school in Wadsworth. Leanne was in the 3rd grade when we went up to Stowe, and Chuck was in the 2nd. And I always have felt that they got their good start in Wadsworth.
They got the good start in
Yep.
Wadsworth. The Stowe's a very fine school
It's a
system,
good
too.
school.
Excellent school system.
But I think your first 2 years are so important.
You bet.
And
Kindergarten, what you learn in kindergarten directs you for the rest of your life.
right, and they really had good teachers in Wadsworth, and they have had every place, but they did get a good start here. And then Chuck went to Western Reserve Academy, and from there to Brown, and then from there to Cincinnati School of Medicine. And then he did his internship at Columbia Presbyterian in New York, and he's now a neurosurgeon in New York.
Neurosurgeon in New York. And that's, you know, a particular of interest. My daughter-in-law teaches at Columbia in the College of, what is it, medicine? No, it's not what they call it, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, as does my son. However, my son is right now on loan to the New York Academy of Medicine, some kind of a project they're doing there. And what about grandchildren?
I have 5 grandchildren. Chuck has 2 boys, Will and Jess. And then Leanne has a son, Gavin Pinto, and she's married to Craig Bailey, who is the assistant to the superintendent at Highland in Sharon. And he has 2 daughters, Joanna and Katie Bailey.
Now, who is the superintendent's secretary, you say?
He's the assistant superintendent.
Oh, who's that?
That's my son-in-law, Craig Bailey.
Craig Bailey. He's assistant to Dr. Michael Carlson.
Right. They don't call it assistant superintendent, just assistant.
Assistant.
And I guess that's my family.
That takes care of that part. We're going to come back to this in a minute, so remember some of these things. Now, Bud, if you miss the date of your wedding and you mess up, you're on your own. You're on your own. But your sisters will bail you out. Tell us about when you were married, whom you married, and you met your husband at
Midwest Rubber.
But where did you meet Buck?
Well, I didn't actually meet him. I've always known
You just
him.
married him. You didn't meet him. Huh?
Yeah, just started dating in
You just
48.
knew him in school, right?
He, well, I didn't know him in school because he was older. But just from living in Wadsworth, you know, when we were little kids, we'd go to the movies on Sunday, 10 cents. Remember we used to go through the gas station there, and there would be Buck and the gang. And that's when I first knew who he was, you know. And then just...
That's so true of so many people who were married in Wadsworth. They never, I will ask the question, how did you meet her? I don't know when I met her or when I met him. And that's going to be true with you too, Bud.
Well, I got married in '49 to Helen Truex, and we got married at Kenmore Church of Christ, and Ronnie Connect was my best man. You remember?
Yes, Ronnie Connect. Sure, and he married Evan Overholt.
May.
Edna May Overholt.
And we had,
Ronnie's, Ronnie, as we call him, Ronnie.
Right.
Ron and Edna May's daughter used to work for me at the university.
oh, did they?
Oh, the most outstanding person. I just loved her dearly. I still see her from time to time. She lives in California.
Yeah,
It was,
they all live there, I think.
Lori Connect.
Yeah.
What a tremendous person she was.
We had 3 children.
But you have to tell us when you were married and
Oh,
what day.
1949, September the 16th.
Is that right, Mary?
It'll be 50 years in September.
It'll be 50 years in September.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Helen Truex. Who was she, and how did you happen to meet her? And what was one outstanding thing that she did in her senior year, of the many things?
I met her in school. See, when I got out of the Navy, I come back to school. I met her.
What did she do in 1947, which is of particular significance?
Yeah, she was annual queen.
Annual Queen.
First one, I think.
I think so, Bud.
Yeah. And let's see what happened then. Oh, we had 2 kids. Yeah, three children.
We had one at a time. That's what I
Yeah.
was thinking of there.
See, Diane, Denise, and David.
Okay, now Diane is how old and where is she?
She's in Wadsworth. She works at, she graduated from ACNU, and she works at the Veterans Hospital.
Up in Brecksville?
Yeah, can't read this too good. And her husband is Randy. He's the guidance counselor here, Randy Hall.
Randy,
Hall.
H-A-L-L.
And let's see, Denise lives in Hartman Road. She's got what, 3
One dog.
children, 1 child and 2 adopted, or 2
Children.
what would you call them?
Yeah.
Stepchildren.
Yeah.
Have children. And whom did she marry, Bud?
She married
Paul T.
Paul Taylor.
Paul
He
Taylor.
works for the city. Yeah.
Okay.
And she works at Barberton Hospital.
What does she do there?
She's in personnel. She takes care of all the insurances for the hospital.
God bless her.
Yeah, it's
Nothing
rough.
I'd hate
Rough
worse than,
job.
oh, nothing I'd hate worse than doing that. But it's good that we have someone who does it.
Yeah.
Then you have a son there too, don't
And
you?
then I have Dave. He's at Chardon. He's a sales manager for, what is it, Chardon Rubber. And his wife's name is Joanne. And they have a girl named Carrie. Oh, that's Diane.
That's Diane.
That's my granddaughter. She graduated from ACNU, Carrie.
Your granddaughter graduated from ACNU? You're my
Sure.
age and you have grandchildren who graduated from college?
Well, I got a great-grandson. Her boy is my great-grandson. And see, Diane and Carrie, they graduated both from ACNU. But I don't know what Carrie graduated in. Business or marketing or something, I don't know.
I know she's an expert in computers.
Computers,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to have. Bud, we need to hear a little bit about Bud. Now, you know, the girls have been overpowering, obviously, in your family, and they told you what to do and so forth, but you have your own life, and in addition to, well, I mean, I'm obviously kidding. You have your own life, and something in your life which very few people know about. I happen to know about it simply because I've followed you in your career. But you worked where, and tell us a little bit about some of the extracurricular things that you did with the factory with which you worked.
Well, I worked at the match in the injector, and then when I got married, I went to Goodyear Aerospace.
To make money,
Yeah.
because you couldn't make any money in the match and the injector, because the injector at that time was paying 85 cents an hour for hard labor,
Yeah.
and the match was paying $1.01 an hour for
I think that's what I was making, $1.01.
I made $1.01 when I worked at the match, and it was called a mule. A mule was a person who pushed a big cart that someone filled up. with matches, and it would
Yeah.
push them, and then someone would unload them. I wasn't allowed to lift them, or I wasn't allowed to unload them. All I could do was push.
I worked out on the yard gang.
The yard gang.
Yeah.
Who was
And
your
I-
boss, you remember?
Brubaker, Elmer Brubaker.
Elmer Brubaker,
Yeah.
lived west of town.
And Boffman.
Which Boffman?
I can't think of his first name.
Was
He was a carpenter boss, but he
Wasn't
was
his name Elmer too?
Oh, I don't know.
Lived
Okay.
down on South Main Street in
That
Wadsworth.
Boffman, okay.
Yeah.
There was a Glenn Boffman who lived in Silver Creek, but not that, was not the same one.
And
Who was your boss at the injector, and who'd you work with at the injector?
I think it was Cale. Chuck
Chuck Cale?
was the foreman, or then he got to be plant manager.
Yeah, he was a plant manager there.
Yeah.
We had him on this program too, Chuck
Yeah,
Cale.
when I was there in the steel, I worked for him. And he was the foreman of the steel. And then when I left, I went to aerospace and worked over there about 15 years. Played a lot of softball.
Ah, that's what I wanted to hear. Here comes a young man who, well, you played quite a bit of sports in high school too. But as a matter of fact, very good athlete in high school.
I was on that state championship.
Which one?
Wrestling.
Wrestling state championship.
42.
And
I never went to state, but I got beat out in the districts.
tell us a little about your weight and how you wrestled.
I wrestled, I weighed about 115, but I wrestled 105. I had to get down to 105 to wrestle. And I won all my tournament, through the season, and got beat out in the districts. But I lettered, well, I was only a freshman when I lettered. But the next year, Doane went into the service, so all the
Russ Doane, who was what?
wrestling coach
Wrestling
and
coach.
teacher. And who else? Somebody else went in. Oh, Art Wright went in the service. But they quit wrestling until, well, I played 4 years of football for Wadsworth too.
You bet you did. I remember that as if it were yesterday. And you were what position on football team?
Well, I played mostly guard.
Right guard.
And linebacker. Yeah.
Tough as nails.
Yeah, that's what Burnison said. He wished he had had 11 guys as tough as I was.
You were small but mighty. My heavens, I can still remember, and Levi Mills played on the team with you
Yep.
one time. Levi could throw a ball 100 yards, I'll swear.
His hands are like, yeah.
He could throw a ball 100 yards and it would look like a bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he would throw, and then he would smile at you, and then you go charging up there, and they were scared to death of you. Now tell us a little bit about your baseball prowess at
Well, I played softball.
Or softball, I'm
fast
sorry.
pitch, yeah, a
Softball.
fastball for about 5 years there.
How old were you at the time?
I was 20, about 24, I think, something like that.
Well, you
Maybe.
played until you were in your 40s, as I remember.
Yeah, 41 years old.
41 years old. Good. I mean,
Yeah,
40,
my legs
most
give
people
out
can't
on
even
me.
walk.
But I was in pretty good shape. And I went from fast pitch to slow pitch and played slow pitch for aircraft.
What was the reason for that? Just out of curiosity.
Well, they quit playing fast.
Why?
I don't know.
Just
Maybe the age, I don't know.
I'm not positive whether it was, but that it just seemed that we all went to slow pitch at that time.
slow pitch. Yeah, I was trying to think of the teams that I played for when I left aircraft. When they quit making the blimp, well, our whole department got laid off.
What kind of things did you do at the
I was in a plastic lab over there, make plastic parts for the blimp, Lincoln Continentals, armrests, and a lot of plastics. They had big presses over there. And,
What were some of the things that you did as a softball player? I mean, what kinds of honors did you receive?
well, just trophies.
Just trophies.
Just trophies.
Would you expect money?
No, not really.
Just trophies.
Yeah, I played second, and then I played outfield. I played second mostly in fast pitch and outfield. And
They were considered a very heavy hitter, too.
I was pretty good, but I didn't hit the long ball. I hit a lot of singles, doubles, triples.
Well, you add up those singles and the doubles, and they certainly come into play. Did the two of you ever play any athletics?
I played basketball when I was in junior high, but not in high school.
How about you, Mary?
I played basketball and I think volleyball. I'm not sure though about that. That's too far
Volleyball.
back.
See, one of the things that happened in 1927, I believe this is right, I hope that, if it's not right, somebody will call me to correct me, that they started taking away some of the basketballs from the girl teams, and then it went into the GAA. Remember the GAA, the Girl Athletic
Right.
Association?
I was in that.
You were in that,
was
and they
too.
played kind of an intramural thing, which is very, very good. I'm not knocking it in any way, but you know, the teams that went to state, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, somewhere in that area, 90 Mara Foreman was on that team, and then 1927. Florence Huffman Surface was on that team, and they won the state championship. I believe that's true. Then little by little they start diminishing that until then, of course, they came back into play, and now we have begun winning state championships again. We're going to run out of time. Tell us, Mary, some of the real memories that you have of Wadsworth, which you know you carry on throughout the. And I'll give you a start. One of the real memories I have is having lunch not lunch, but during the lunch breaks at Wadsworth Central High School, which was just called the high school at that time. And we would walk up and down the streets, you know, during the lunchtime, and then we would walk back, and no one ever, you know, escaped. We always went back, and all of that, and that's such a fond memory. What are some of the fond memories of your girlhood days in Wadsworth? It doesn't have to be connected with school.
Gosh. Can't really think of anything, Caesar.
What about some boyfriends? Anything like that?
Well, always boyfriends.
There's always boyfriends. Oh, of course.
Yeah. Well, I can't really think of anything right
Well, while
now.
you're thinking, we'll ask Anna to tell us about her fond memories.
Well, I have fond memories from the time I can remember back to about 2 years old.
No kidding.
And one of my first fond memories, when we were little, we had this dog, Queenie, that was just the joy of our
You
lives.
remember Queenie, Mary?
And one morning when we got up, the three of us, so Mary must have only been maybe about 5 and Bud was even smaller, here were all these puppies.
Oh my.
And we asked Dad, where did the puppies come from? And he said, Tommy Lucas brought them.
Tommy. Tommy Lucas got blamed for everything.
Everything.
As a matter of fact, the teachers would say, well, if you don't behave, you'll call Tommy Lucas.
Right.
Yeah,
And boy, that was straighten out of class in a hurry. You remember that, Bud? Yeah.
yeah.
And Tommy Lucas was the nicest guy in the
He
whole world,
was.
but
Great.
he instilled fear in every person in Wadsworth.
Yeah.
He did, I guess except us, because, you know, we were right there and we played with the Rude kids who were his grandchildren.
That's right, yes.
So he was almost like family.
Yeah, Mrs. Root was a Lucas, wasn't she?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, Phyllis and Sue Root and
There was Bob and
Jimmy was
Jimmy.
yeah,
yeah.
his son.
then
Joe Lucas
yeah.
worked at the match.
And right next door to the Lucas home was the woods. And the woods is where we spent our whole summer, because at that time the school had craft classes over there. And we made baskets and picked blueberries, and then down where the creek was in the woods, the injector had a pile of shavings in there. So if we found the brass shavings, we'd take them over at the injector and get pennies for them.
Pennies for them, that's all. That was a great deal of money in those days.
Right.
You're talking about the woods. Was there a tabernacle in the woods?
Yes.
Tell us about the tabernacle.
Well, I remember we used to go there around evenings to listen to them having their services, and we were always surprised because they were pretty
Volatile.
Right. So we'd always peek in there in the evenings and watch their services.
Now, you didn't go in, though, is that
No,
right?
No.
But yeah, that was there when we were little.
But what do you remember? We have just a few seconds left. Tell us what you can remember about your happy days as a small child.
Oh boy, a lot of good days.
We always had fun days, didn't
Yeah.
Fun days.
Durling Park
Yeah.
and Holmesbrook, where we
All of those things.
Well, we'd always go out the pool. That's I was there every day.
Every day. The legacy that the Doyles have left Wadsworth, brought to Wadsworth from Ireland and Scotland, will long be remembered. The unfortunate thing is that very few of you are living, and the three of you are the oldest ones who are living. And we're grateful that you were able to share with us what your legacy was, and these pictures, these wonderful things that are now nothing more than memories in your minds, are now going to be the memories of the people who will be able to see these 50 or 100 years from now. So we're grateful to you for having brought them to us, and you can always be assured that Wadsworth will always remember the Doyles as being a very strong, firm influence in the entire city, and we're thankful to you for that. Thank you for coming on the program for us.
Thank you.
Thanks
you.
for having us too.